Hi, everybody, and welcome to Friday Night Flock Talk. I'm Robin Sullivan of the Leather Elves. I hope you're all doing well. Despite the foot of snow that's outside, we're going to talk about warm things tonight. But first, I need to do those reminders. Please like the Leather Elves on Facebook to get notifications, like and follow us. You can check the Facebook page for pop-up sales and events. You can follow the Leather Elves on Instagram, and you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. So there's a lot of different ways to find us. But however you choose, I hope that you get things out of every Friday night. So like I said, we're going to talk about warm things. So I need to introduce you to my guest, who most of you I think are probably familiar with. He's been a guest before. Um, and that would be Dr. Jason Crean. Jason hey there. Oh, look, it's
Hey,
nice and warm there, isn't it?
yeah, very much so.
Before we came on, I said to Jason, so it's cold and 70. Yeah, I wish I knew what that felt like, but I don't. But hey, I like the snow. I choose to live here. So anyway, Jason is a biologist who has raised birds since the age of 12. His current focus is the raising of arasaris and the Sierra parakeet. Is that still true? This is an old
Hmm.
bio. Uh,
Yep, among
he
other
keeps
things.
he keeps a variety of softbills in his aviaries in Florida. He also teaches courses in zoo biology and animal nutrition at St. Xavier University and acts as a zoo consultant and has an incredible product line called Biodiversity Bird Blends. So, did I miss a lot?
That's great. No problem.
All right. So, we've got all kinds of comments. West Branch Aviary. Hello, West Branch Aviary. They say, I love Jason's place. His usage of space and edible plants is impressive, and he's such a lovely host. Look at that.
Thanks.
So
I
before it
try.
starts to get before it starts to get dark, which it will get dark later there, tell us where you're standing and what's going on.
So I'm in my main aviary. Basically, the setup here is I have a main aviary that's about 800 square feet. It's about 20 feet tall and very, very well planted. I've got at least 30 different species out here, everything from tiny strawberry finches and paradise tanagers to Nicobar pigeons, Victoria crown pigeons. I have fruit doves, among other things. I have a blue crown pigeon who doesn't leave my side. He's constantly at my heels here. Um, but A pair of African pygmy geese, among other things. So we have this has kind of evolved over time where I built in uh, what planted boxes that we had already built in and then built around it this aviary. And what you see behind me up at the top here, you'll see it's dark. That's all passion flower vine, which is the Edulus species. That's the one that's edible and safe. And that was planted naturally by a bird, a wild bird, before we built the aviary, and it sprung up as a single vine. And now this entire half of the aviary is covered in this vine. But what's really cool about that is we have found over 2 dozen nests that the birds have built in up in that vine in the canopy there. So all naturally built with stuff they find around the aviary, and it's been an awesome learning experience for us here.
So,
Um,
Jason, do you have to? That brings up a good point. So it's wonderfully planted. It is beautiful. I've visited. Do you ever put things in for them to use as nesting material, or is it all just natural?
yeah, I use a lot of dry hay and stuff like that, straw, because
Mhm.
Nicobar pigeons, which are the closest living relative to like the dodo bird, they like to build a nest. They like to add stuff to the nest, so lots of sticks, and the crown pigeons will do that too. And if you're not familiar with what a crown pigeon is, it's like this blue guy here that just won't leave my side. So they're really big, like turkey size almost, but they like sticks. So I use like handfuls of Timothy hay, orchard grass, stuff that you would feed your guinea pig or rabbit for enrichment. I would, it's not like parrots that want to excavate. Like the
Mhm.
toucans here, the arsaris and the toucanettes, they use a palm log. So they climb into a palm log and, excavate it. They don't want anything in there. But other birds like to do that. So, not parrots, but if you have a pet parrot, you shouldn't be giving them anything to sleep inside of anyway, because that just brings up nesting behavior, and you don't want to go down that road. Trust me on that. But these birds out here will use a host of different things. I must track in dog hair now and then because I've actually found dog hair in nests. So like they just find things, and you know use them to weave. I
Now,
have red bishop weavers out here. I've got an example of weaving nests, and you'll have to tell me if you can see it. But there's a couple in nests right here. Can you see
oh,
that?
yep, yep.
So that's all just natural grass or fronds from this palm, and they've weaved these cup like nests that they will use for breeding, and that's an instinctive behavior. They innate, they know how to do it from birth, but then they perfect it and get better at it over time. And females like to pick males who've got the nicest digs. So
It's like that's one of the fascinating things I learned a long time ago about bowerbirds. They
yep.
bring, blue things to the nest, and whoever's
Mm-hmm.
got the most blue junk in their nest is the guy that wins, as the
Yeah.
breeder.
Yeah,
So it's kind of
exactly,
interesting.
exactly. Yeah,
So
they evolution's interesting.
is so you said you planted boxes and then built around it.
Yeah.
What kind of things did you know that you wanted to have in the aviary?
So we did some fruit trees. We did some guava, because I wanted something that was going to be have branches that the birds could actually use for perching and things like that. So we did that. I brought down when I moved down here from Chicago. I did bring down ficus trees that were pretty sparse, and I brought them to
Mhm,
Florida, and they just completely changed and grew like I don't know, like they were finally in their element. And so those, I have mango trees in here. I have guava trees in here, ficus trees, umbrella plants like Schefflera, um,
mhm.
plants like that, knowing that I don't have parrots out here who are destroying these plants. Parrots,
Right.
like no plant is safe from a parrot. So, you have to consider that. But generally speaking, that and then vines, passion flower, which is that's this whole ceiling here. That's all passion flower vine. I do get passion flowers and fruits up here, and like I said, some of these clusters, which it's hard to see now because the light is low, but those clusters up here are nests the birds have built. And we've had red-crested cardinals from Brazil nest up there, and pink pink-headed fruit doves, um, some other birds, but they each build their own nest that they're genetically wired to create. But ficus, palm trees, things like that are typically what we put out here because they're pretty resilient.
So you mentioned you get fruit, sometimes. Do they eat the fruit, what that they come across?
The literal second a guava ripens, I can't beat the fruit doves to it. There's little peck marks, little beak marks in there. So it's great enrichment. They love it. It saves me from chopping it into bite-sized pieces for them because they can just
Mhm.
eat it right off the branch. But yeah, they do seem to know like immediately when it's ripe and they go for it.
I mean, I think that, that brings up a good point when you say that saves you from having to chop it. So I always tell people if you can give whole pieces, big pieces of whatever it is, and let them work on it. I wouldn't allow them to eat, if you're talking about parrots, I wouldn't have them eat, a whole guava fruit. But give them a bigger piece than that little chopped up tiny piece, because that's what they do. These guys are doing what they do in the wild, and that's what it is.
Yeah, and when we feed, I throw like I'll have a banana lengthwise so that the seeds
Mhm.
are exposed, and there's nothing left but the peel.
Yeah.
You can see the little tiny bite marks, beak marks in it. So giving them whole pieces, even for small birds, is beneficial just for
Yeah.
enrichment. It gets them visiting different feeding stations. I have 6 feeding stations out here. There's 4 elevated, 2 on the ground, because we have ground birds out here like partridges and quail. So I want to make sure that everybody has access, but that they have choices and they can go into the box to feed so that other birds from a distance can't see them eating and like try to be territorial. Seems to work. We have no everybody's pretty friendly out here.
So there's a question that comes up. I mean, and I know some people house their parrots in group aviaries. They're multiple animals in an aviary. How do you keep track of what they're eating, that they're getting enough? How do you manage that?
So a lot of it is gauging. So when we first, because when it's cooler, the birds will eat a lot more. Mate probably to build up their energy because they're going to have
Mhm.
to expend a lot more energy to stay warm. And down here in Central Florida, it does get into the 30s some nights over the winter. So it's cold for the birds. Yeah, I know. I love it because it's not cold like what I'm used to up in Chicago. But generally speaking, then we check throughout the day to see how much food is left.
Mhm.
Fresh food offered during the day isn't going to spoil unless it's really hot outside. It's typically okay, but if all the food's gone by 1 or 2 in the afternoon, we need to supplement and look at that again. So typically, I'm feeding once in the early morning, and then
Mhm.
they have access to that food. Most of them eat what they need to in the first couple of hours, and then that's it. And then we'll supplement with dry food in the evening. Out here, we do a lot of different types of seeds, finch seeds, dove seeds, stuff like that, especially for the ground birds and the finches out here. So really, you're just kind of gauging how is there food left, or are they just annihilating the both? So that
Right.
early on, so that you have to offer more. Yeah,
Okay.
and when they're
So
breeding,
it's really
obviously they're going to eat more too. So
sure. And I think, it's a good lesson is that you kind of listen to what they're showing you and you pay attention. And
mhm.
we talk a lot, we've been talking a lot about other species, and we talked about passerines couple weeks ago, and we were talking about really observation is the way to manage that successfully, to kind of see what's happening and and then gauge what your response is from there. So, do we want to
and
go?
I will say data collecting data is important because if you're and from working in the zoo world, if you our minds can play tricks on us, right? Our short-term memory
Mhm.
and long-term memory sometimes aren't the most dependable things, and we may say, oh, the birds love this because it's always gone, right? The bird loves this food. But then if you're collecting data and you're realizing, well, only half of the time they like that food,
Mhm. Yeah.
or boy, the birds are really eating a lot from this bowl, but they're not touching the one over there. So collecting data and just kind of marking things down on a daily basis so you have a long term look helps you better make
Mhm.
decisions. So that's always helpful. But with parrots, they don't eat everything you want them to eat. And so it takes persistent on your part. And sometimes you have to
Mhm.
withdraw food that they're accustomed to give them new foods so that they're more motivated to try those new foods. So, it's a different situation than out here with 30 different species who are all
Right.
eating sprouted seeds or fruits or greens or whatever we have out here.
And I think too, let's get sciencey for a minute. There is confirmation bias too. We
Yes.
we believe what we want to believe, and so data can help with that. That it's not, oh, I think they're hungry. Oh, I think it shouldn't be. I think they're hungry. It's I've measured, I've weighed, I've whatever. I've collected that information, And I have the data to back up, yes, they're hungry. They need more of this, they need less of that. So yeah,
Hmm.
I think it's important. And it doesn't, people who companion parrot owners sometimes will get overwhelmed by, oh, I have to keep data. I don't want to do that. But, this is my family member, but it's still in the best interest of the birds.
Hmm. Yeah,
So,
just keeping a
um,
journal, keeping a journal or just some kind of daily, how much did your bird eat? What did it eat? And if
yeah,
it's only eating certain things, maybe you need to look at portion size and rethink what you're doing so that you can increase the things it's not eating to make sure that you're not there's no nutrition gaps.
yeah. And I've said this 1,000 times, food is not love, contrary to what some of us
Yeah,
grew up with. But
yeah,
so
exactly.
do you want to stay back there, or do you want to go out front as we talk a little bit more about planting and how to go about that?
Sure, I can start moving. Can you see the fruit doves here?
Yes.
They're like posing. That's a trio of black nape fruit doves. The male has the white face, and their
Okay.
favorite's blueberries. And if you don't have
Nice.
blueberries in the morning, yeah, there's going to be hell to pay.
They could come to
And
Maine. We
some,
have a lot of blueberries.
oh yeah, yeah. And some of these plants here, just before we leave, like this here, this is a pineapple guava. This is the first time it's actually flowering for me. It's getting big enough to do that, so that's exciting. But pineapple guava, Jamaican cherry, caliandra, which are called powder puffs, because they give out these little powder puff flowers that almost look like bottle brush, but they're smaller. Bottle
Huh.
brush I have in here as well. Birds love the nectar from bottle brush flowers, so you kind of get the picture. There's a lot of things that you can do, but if you have parrots, they're gonna destroy it. It's gonna be a really expensive trip.
Well, we've already signed on for the expensiveness, with parrots in the first place. But
Yeah.
so so you are fortunate enough to be downside. Do you want to talk about those guys before you move?
Can you see them? I wasn't sure because it's kind of dark, but
Yes. Oh, there we go.
okay. Yeah. So those are green arasaris. We have a few pairs of those here. I've been breeding them for about 25 years. And some of these birds are actually third generation from me, and they're dimorphic. The males have a black head, like this one here, and the females have a brown head. You probably can't see that, but the sun's going down, so it's dark back here. But they have a palm log in the back that they nest in because they're breeders. But if you have a single one as a pet, don't give them anything to nest in. Please listen to me when I say this. Please, please, please. And then before I go out front, another really great enrichment is this. This is my bamboo forest on this side of the fence that I planted when I first came down, and we cut the bamboo and use it for enrichment with all different types of birds. Um, Bamboo is great because it's strong. They can really get into it. Little birds like to pick the leaves off and things like that. It has leaf bracts that actually point up, and that can be a problem with leg bands. So they can get caught on those. So I usually hang bamboo upside down so the leaf bracts are
Mhm.
down. But they have these leaf bracts that actually point up, and if a bird gets caught on those, it's a problem. But hanging it upside down or throwing it on top of a cage, it's a really fun way to destroy something, and it takes a little while.
I love bamboo for enrichment because when you get to the species, they get bigger in diameter. Um,
Yes.
you can, they have the natural shelf in there. So if you're working with corvids, they can cache things away inside a piece of bamboo. If you're working with smaller birds, you can use them for, if you're working with citizens or passerines, you can use them as foraging devices. So I just
Mm-hmm.
think bamboo is great. Ridiculously invasive though. If
Yeah,
people are
yeah,
thinking about,
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry, there's a delay.
No, I was just gonna say if people are thinking about planting, the bamboo will take over. It's just that's the way it goes.
Yeah, and you can get certain types of bamboo that clumps instead of spreads and things like that. So keep that in mind when you're planting bamboo. But what's great about some bamboo is you can do it in pots, so that you can keep it under control, and then you can move the pots in with your birds, let them destroy a bit, take it back out, let them grow again. So bamboo is a really good, useful plant for things like that.
That
So
was a question that Adrian had, that I actually was gonna ask you too. So the things we just saw out in the back aviary, are those things that can be planted in pots and brought to, used in an indoor aviary?
you got to do your research, because if you live in a different climate than here, there's going to some plants will and some plants won't. So you need to know your
Mhm,
zone. You need to look up the
mhm,
plant, and then you need to figure out, like, even if you do have a warm summer, like Chicago, we had warm summers. We had 100-degree days up there. We didn't have that we don't have down here. Um, so some plants, like, I just couldn't put them out in the blazing sun. They just wouldn't survive up there. But here I can bring them outside, and they're they seem to be okay. But it really depends on the plant, where you live, what your temperature, nighttime temperature, daytime temperature is, and humidity. Because humidity
mhm,
is something we don't generally pay attention to when we're trying to keep plants alive, especially indoor plants.
right. Frank did ask too, and I can answer this for you, Frank. Can cockatoos play with or eat bamboo? Absolutely. I mean, a cockatoo will, Frank, I would go for a bigger diameter. You can still do the little ones, but a cockatoo will probably just snap them in half. I like to use bamboo, the thin bamboo in clumps and just tie it bunch together. And then you can put stuff down inside, but the bigger diameter that has the natural their nodes where the nodes go together, that's you can put things in there. You can just drill a hole in the side. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I think bamboo is great for pretty much all species.
Yep.
So what have we got out front?
So this is my front yard Florida food forest. Everything out here for the most part is food, and generally for the birds. Um, Eat a little bit of it now and then, but I've got behind me right here. This is a papaya tree. Um, you can see there's some papayas growing on there. They're just starting. And then all of this here is fig. So I've got different types of figs all along this bed here, all the way around. I've got peaches already growing, flowers. So I've got things like pansies or violas. I've got herbs like basil, which is here, and this basil here, it's already flowering and seeding, and all of that is good for the birds as well.
Nice.
I've got, like I said, lots of blueberries, like here,
Th-
lots of blueberries.
You had
And then,
nasturtiums.
yeah, so nasturtiums I have lots of, because I can feed them to pretty much any animal I have here. And those are all this entire bed, all the way around. It goes all the way around. And so there's lots of nasturtiums in there. The whole plant is edible, from root to leaf to stem. They use them. They use the round leaves in salads because they've got a peppery taste. And the
Mhm.
flower is completely edible as well, the whole thing. And then interspersed in here, I've got blueberry bushes and beautyberry, something that's commonly grown down here as well. So
You know,
all of this,
the thing about nasturtiums, I mean, you can pretty much grow nasturtiums in almost any zone, during
yeah.
season, and
Hmm.
they're pretty forgiving, as far as I kill things when I grow things, but, I mean, nasturtiums will pretty much you just gotta make sure that they've got
Water,
water.
it's
Yeah.
water. Yeah. They get water, every morning, but you can build these in, put these in any kind of bed. Even if you live in an apartment, you can put a box out on your little windowsill and they'll grow and pour over the side. And you can keep them going for quite a while. So
Mhm.
yeah, they're they're
The
they're,
you
they're
should
really easy to
I'll tell
grow.
him, Jason, when we before everybody came on, Jason, we were talking about the nasturtium, and you had pulled up a huge clump, roots,
Hmm.
everything, and hung it, and the birds were eating, they were eating with it.
Yeah, please hold. I'm going to do it right now.
Okay, look at this. It's an action show now. Um,
Live, yeah, live. So here's here's a nasturtium, okay, and it's a long, viney thing. But the entire plant you could hang right up inside the cage and just let them have at it. This whole thing. What's funny is the one I showed you earlier, and I forgot to show it when I was in there. I just threw that on the floor of the main aviary so that the birds could have at it if they wanted to. And nobody's touched it yet because it's probably new, but it's growing. It's growing in there. All I
mhm.
did was throw it on the ground and it's already growing. So like even the brownest of thumbs can have some success with growing some of these
Here we
things.
go. Elaine says the deer eat the nasturtium where she lives. So, you know,
There's
gotta
ways
share
to
the
get around.
wealth.
There's ways to get around that. Yeah, there's ways to get around that though. Um, you can absolutely cage them. I've seen people put just cages or used bird cages around them so that they can
Mhm.
grow, big enough. I've seen people put them up higher so that the deer can't, reach them. Um, I mean, there's a lot of ways. You're smarter than the wildlife. Trust me on that. You can do this.
It's definitely
These are
true. So
bananas.
Janice and Adrian and Elaine, you guys are all gonna outsmart the deer with your nasturtiums.
Yeah.
So what have we got there beside you?
These are bananas and banana leaves. You and I have talked about this. This is such fantastic enrichment because this whole leaf is edible. The whole leaf can be used. I love throwing these just up on top of bird cages and just letting them spend
Mhm.
all day pulling these through. And they
Yeah,
go into little strips. And if you don't grow these, you can usually go to an Asian market where they sell these like folded and wrapped in plastic so that you can take them home and people cook. They wrap food in them and cook inside of them, and so you can get them there too. I have really big bananas on in my side garden behind behind
nice.
behind the house here. You can probably see that. I think. Sorry, I'm trying
Yep.
here with this selfie stick. Um,
No, you're doing great.
Yeah, I'm trying. And then this is bottle brush where you can see those red uh, bristly flowers. We
Mhm.
actually grow those here and then we add Banksia pods, eucalyptus pods, things from Australia. And we have, yeah, there's a picture of one of our bottle brushes. And we freeze dry all of that and put it into a foraging blend that we have available on our website now. And the
Nice.
pictures that we've been getting from people, I think Julie Williams was on here, but
Mhm.
she's an Aussie and she's like, oh, the birds loved it. So we hear, I love hearing from people about how the birds just seem to pick up these things because they make sense to them. So there's all
Yeah.
these little, Australian items that we've now freeze dried and put into a bundle so that people can just, let their birds have at it.
So what is the name of that one? Michelle needs some for Shadow, her bear-eyed.
It's our Go Wild Australian foraging mix. So it's
All
under the
right.
foraging section of our website. But that's been
Cool.
really popular. And what's been really cool is some Australian people who follow me through my nutrition group, the Avian Raw Nutrition group on Facebook, um, have contacted me and are like, "This is fantastic. I'm so glad birds over there are getting what some of the natural things we have here."
Mhm.
Because for their birds over there, they can just go outside and grab all this stuff. So
Yeah.
I'm glad that we've found ways to get some of these things in our Go Wild foraging mix that we work with the Indonesian Parrot Project, like we're importing these nuts that are really that you can't get here. But these are the
Mhm.
things that these birds are eating in the wild. So I'm glad that we can work to get these things, to the birds here so that they have a
Yeah.
biologically appropriate foraging opportunity.
When you were talking about the banana leaves, just to go back to that for a second, they're an awesome, way to encourage foraging because you can wrap things in the banana leaves, and then you don't need to
Yeah.
worry if they looks like they're ingesting little pieces, it's not a horrible situation. We used to use them with raptors too. We would wrap stuff in banana leaves for foraging opportunities for raptors, but Joanna Ross says the Go Wild is phenomenal. So yay. But it's just there's so many different ways you can use all of these different items that you're showing us. They can be used as part of their food. They can be used as enrichment. It's about how you present it, I think.
Yeah, it
Um,
definitely can be. And I think keeping birds, like I say this every time we talk, keeping birds is a scientific experiment that never ends, right? You're constantly trying to figure out ways. Part of it is how is your bird hardwired to forage? Like, what does it
yeah.
do in the wild? You can find footage probably on YouTube of, macaws hanging upside down. Most of their day is
Mhm.
climbing around in trees, reaching for food. So
Yeah.
do that. Allow them to do that. Hang food from a skewer or hang it from the top or put it over the top of the cage and let them pull it through on their own. Any exercise is good exercise. Flight is not the only
Well,
exercise. So,
no, and I was
definitely
watching
get them moving.
as you were holding the nasturtiums up, that my head just immediately went to tie that around the top, a top rung in a cage and hang it dead center. So now they've got to, exercise. They've got to use different muscles that they might not be using in a cage or on a play stand. You could also hang it on a play stand. And I think, it's a matter of how you're asking them to work for that food. Like you said, flight is not the only exercise. There are definitely other ways to keep them moving. And by presenting these kind of, sometimes novel food items, you're going to get them moving because they're going to be investigating.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, and
um,
change it up. Like, you don't want
yeah.
birds complacent or dependent, right? That's the worst possible thing. And I know there's people watching this who are probably like, well, my bird will go on strike if he doesn't get this every day. You're smarter than your bird. Let them guess. Let them keep them guessing. Keep their minds active. Every single time you introduce something new into the environment, they're learning. So let them do that. It's really, really important. And I think we get so into a routine that the birds get used to a routine. And then when you have to break the routine, all hell breaks loose.
Mhm.
Like, we've all had birds that, have thrown a fit. So
Yeah.
don't let them do that.
No, and I think, that routine, for some people, they need it for themselves. And I think I'm a list maker and a scheduler. And so if you just put down, I'm going to do this, this, and this, and it's a little bit different every day, yes, it's a schedule, but it's not, a routine that's the same every single day. And it's offering these new things. And you and I have also talked about that. Um, Michelle says Shadow doesn't know that she's smarter. She keeps letting him think that he is smarter. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I think, offering different things and trying different items and really I think sometimes we're the ones that are not open to
Yes,
trying those new things. And when we do try those new things, we do here you go. Oh, no, you can't, you didn't like that today. Well, okay, we're never going to try it again.
exactly. That's unfair to the bird. I mean, that's really unfair to the bird to only give them so many opportunities to take advantage of these things. So it's a problem. It's a problem, and it's a widespread problem too. We see it a lot. And because I hear all the time, like, oh, my bird wouldn't touch that. Well, how many times did you try? Or people
Mhm,
saying, well, I just want to get a sample of this food so I can try it. Your bird needs at least 3 solid weeks of exposure to something. So you need more than
yeah,
just a little sample and then give up. Like, you really, really need to to give them a chance at these things.
mhm.
So
Well, and Adrienne brings up a good point. She says her blue and gold will eat fruit or vegetable chunks when she puts them in the foraging cage, like the cage holder. But she'll toss them out of her dish. So it's right there. It's about presentation.
Yeah,
We need to really think about, okay, so maybe that, putting it in the bowl didn't work. Well, that may be because you've always put the same thing in the bowl and now there's something brand new and I don't know about that. So you need to think about how you're presenting it too. And to present something and have it be like, here you go, this is it. You need to really kind of ease into it and make sure that it's presented in a way that they identify it as food. I think that's important.
exactly. Yep.
Um,
Contra freeloading,
so
right?
Exactly, exactly. And I've had so many people tell me, nope, contra freeloading isn't a thing. My bird won't work for their food. They will. They will.
Yes.
Um,
Not if you keep
it's just
giving
weird.
in. If you keep giving in, I just watched this video and there's this younger guy and he's like, "Well, I've only ever eaten chicken fingers and pizza." Well, your parents should have had a harder line about that because that is just plain wrong and unhealthy. So you know, keeping those things in mind so that you're exposing them to different things, get them accustomed to change because that's the only thing constant in their environment is
Right.
change. So you gotta make sure. And there's also things that help, that you can offer that help, them adapt. There's adaptogenic
Mhm.
compounds in things such as moringa, which is actually right behind me here. This tree here, there it is. Moringa is a superfood. It's a green, and you can literally this. I got this plant as a stick. It looked like a wand from Harry Potter. You stick it in the ground. Within weeks, it becomes a tree. If you hack it down and you use the whole top, it starts putting off branches and becomes a tree again. Like really, really resilient all summer. If you're just in a place where you can only grow plants in the summer, you can put it in a pot, grow it in full sun. I have some in the aviary as well, and the birds are perching in it all the time. But definitely moringa, Tulsi. Tulsi is another one that we brew as tea and offer as well. And so that's a whole other thing that you can offer that has adaptogenic compounds that gets your birds, it like calms your birds down so that so they can adapt to change. And that's something
Mhm.
that we don't think about as often as we probably should.
So any suggestions for Elaine? She's been trying to get Kamala to eat kale for 7 years. And I believe Elaine when she says that. Elaine is a phenomenal parrot owner, and she's got Kamala foraging and doing wonderful things, but kale is just not working. Any suggestions? And he froze on me
So
before his
if
suggestion. Oh,
free hairs, am I back? Am I
yes.
here?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
If she's offered kale every day for 7 years, I would definitely try something else.
Mm,
I would definitely withdraw the food. I think one of the biggest mistakes people make in general is they leave dry food in there all the time because they're absolutely terrified their bird's going to starve, and
mhm,
they're not going to starve. They'll be okay as long as they've got access to some kind of food throughout the day. They're going to be fine. But I pull all food at night. There's no food overnight, so that the very first thing in the morning is what I want the birds to eat. And that's typically sprouts, microgreens, uh, chopped veg, fruits, things like that. They don't see any dry
okay.
food until later in the day. But kale is
Mich-
kale is a brassican, so there's other things you can try, like Brussels sprouts. I have birds who absolutely love Brussels sprouts, and I frankly think Brussels sprouts, relatively speaking, are healthier than kale. They've got some omega 3s, fatty acids. So Brussels sprouts. Sometimes birds like to peel them. They like the shape of them. They like the texture. You can also buy Brussels sprouts, especially at farmers markets, still on the stem where they're
yeah.
stuck on the stem, and you can hang the stem in there and let them destroy that. So there's other foods that are readily available, and I've been in grocery stores all over the country, and there are other foods that are readily available all the time, produce wise, that you can totally try. Peppers with the seeds are a real turn on for a lot of birds. Um, and it doesn't even really matter what kind of pepper. But between birds are often deficient in vitamin A, so they need to eat beta carotenes. And the best way to get beta carotenes into your diet is not a synthetic vitamin A vitamin. It is from food, red, yellow, orange vegetables, and things like that. Peppers, squashes, those types of things. And you can cut those into all different sizes or not cut them at all and give them the whole damn thing and let them just destroy it. Stuff the pepper, cut the pepper in half, stuff it with other things that they like so that they have to kind of eat some of the pepper to get to the stuff. So there's definitely ways that you can experiment and trick them into good nutrition.
There we go. Michelle was wondering, is that the same moringa that they make perfume out of? It smells like gardenia.
Um, I'm not sure. The flowers
Okay.
possibly, but I haven't had any flower here yet, so I'm not entirely sure.
Well, we won't, we're gonna rat out, Nancy ratted herself out, that she raids the ones on the post office grounds regularly.
Mhm.
We won't. So she's going and getting the moringa for her birds.
I'm
Um,
I'm that crazy person that pulls off on the off ramp of the highway to clip bottle brush when I don't have enough here to clip bottle brush from some of those trees. So yeah, we all do what we need to.
so Gary has a question. He says he works from 5 a.m. to 4 p.m. Is it okay to leave their mix in the morning and do the sprouts and chop when he gets home?
Um, if they're eating it, it's not a problem. But I would definitely, I mean, regardless of the day, the long day, I always tend to do fresh food every morning so that they have what they'll eat in the first couple of hours generally. But like I said, fresh food is not going to spoil while you're at work. Cooked food will, which is why I'm really
Mhm.
anti cooked food. I don't push any type of cooked food for birds at all. I really want fresh, sprouts that you do at home in your kitchen that take literally 2 minutes a day to do. And then microgreens that you can grow right on your windowsill or chopped veg and things like that. But none of that's going to spoil while you're at work. So you don't have to worry about that.
Okay. So we kind of digressed from planting. Um, but I think this has really been good. I like the giving people different ideas about how they can incorporate, fresh foods and what they can grow. Um, we talked about nasturtiums being easy. Are there any other plants that you could recommend that are like easy breezy, low kill rate plants?
So let me start by saying just because it's a safe plant, meaning like non toxic, doesn't
Mhm,
mean that it's safe when you buy it from a big box store, for example. They use lots of herbicides and fungicides and pesticides, okay? Because they got to sell that plant in looking its best. So just keep that in mind. Spider plants are a really popular one that people use in aviaries, especially with finches and things like that. But make sure you know your source, where you're getting it from. I personally take the pups from a newly purchased one and start growing them in brand new fresh soil, so that as soon
mhm.
as those little pups that the spider plant puts out, I can have other plants for them to use. Um, but as far as growing, your herbs are probably your easiest because you can literally grow them anywhere that there's sun. Basil, oregano. I've got rosemary plants growing out here too. Like all of those types of things are easy. And thank you. And my volunteers leaving. Um, and you can grow them in a host of different places, and you can use the whole plant. Um, Nasturtiums, I tend to buy seed so that I know the whole life of the plant. So my nasturtiums are growing in soil that I put in. I know what's in the soil, I know what's in the seed, and I know what that plant is producing. Same thing with my potted plants, like my violas, the pansies, and things like that. I buy them as seed, and I try to grow them from seed. But if you buy already purchased plants, you're looking at weeks and weeks of watering and repotting to make sure that you're kind of working that stuff out so that it's
Mhm.
at least a lower level and less problematic.
Yeah, I mean, I can even handle herbs, although we have Joanna and Frank going back and forth. Joanna's gonna kill plants and Frank says, "Hold my beer." So, we've got some work to do here. But, I think so
Joanna,
as far as
Joanna,
a
Joanna's going to come down here, and she's going to spend some time with me, and we're gonna learn how to not kill plants, Joanna. I promise.
excellent. I think we should have a workshop to do that. I really do.
Yep,
Um,
yep.
so as far as growing medium is concerned, um, what do you suggest? Like, because people go out, and I think there's the misconception that you can just if you buy a bag of potting soil, that's fine. Um, what should people be looking for specifically when they go if they go to buy soil to start planting things?
Yeah, I mean, I use organic potting soil. I generally buy it with compost already. It's already mixed in. Um,
Mhm.
and that's typically what I use for all of my growing, regardless of what it is. There is a lot of research that's emerging right now about how much soil birds actually eat. I am not promoting the feeding of soil for your birds, but I think we need to worry a little bit less about birds, having access to some soil. There are definitely in the ground here we have nematodes, those little worms. I don't want
Mhm.
birds having access to that, so that's why I have raised beds where I have soil brought in that I fill these beds with, so that I'm not dealing with those sorts of things. We have found no evidence of those in the 8 months that we've had these beds in. So um, that it's really about knowing, you know. But when you're growing things at home like microgreens, microgreens, you can just grow them in coconut coir, that powdery
Mhm.
kind of peat. It's like that the kits generally come in, and within a week you have that. And if you buy wheatgrass kits, it's the same
Mhm.
thing. They typically grow them in coconut coir, knowing that they're not going to spend their whole lives or very long in those little pots. So
Right.
that's definitely one way to deal with it. But I think we need to be a little bit less afraid. I'm not saying give your bird a pot of soil to forage through, but I do think we need to worry a little bit less, particularly if you know the source. It's
Yeah.
organic, it's not treated, those types of things. And most of us have nurseries near us where we can get things that we can ask those questions.
Right. I mean, I think, a tip off is you don't want the vermiculite in it. You don't want, all the additives. If you're looking at a bag of potting soil and it's got all kinds of stuff added in, then that's not what you're looking for.
Mm,
The coconut coir is great. And it's like you said, it's not forever, but it's wonderful to start plants in. It's wonderful. Even
yep.
I can do that. And microgreens and sprouting, those kind of things, it's definitely something, um, let's see. Okay, so here's a question, and Michelle says, "Don't get mad." But and so
Famous
don't
last
get there
words.
is she has a good reason for asking this question. With the soil, do they need to do anything to prevent Pseudomonas issues?
um I mean, that's generally from soil that's been tainted already. Pseudomonas,
Mhm,
like no living thing, including Pseudomonas bacteria, no living thing comes from nowhere. It doesn't just appear. Every living thing on Earth comes from another living thing. So that Pseudomonas is already there.
mhm,
And so that's typically from water. Pseudomonas is an opportunistic bacteria. It loves the inside of like plastic tubes where there's no food, just water. which means like syringes need to be sterilized between feedings if you're hand rearing babies, for example, because Pseudomonas is a problem. They're opportunistic. They live where other things can't or won't. So you need to know the source, and where the water is coming from. That's actually watering those things.
Yeah. Okay. And then Candy says, what's the difference between microgreens and sprouts?
So sprouts are typically just where the root tip has emerged, and so you're capturing that. You're capturing the seed where the enzymes are really active in turning that dormant seed into a plant. A microgreen is where they've now sprouted roots and leaves. So they're now sprouting leaves, and they're basically small little plants. What's beautiful about microgreens, and when people ask me what's better, I'm like, all of it. Like, feed dry seeds because they have benefits, feed soaked and sprouted seeds, they have benefits, and feed microgreens and adult plants because they have benefits. But microgreens are really nutrient dense. So for
Mhm.
Elaine, who is having problems with kale, maybe don't offer adult kale, maybe offer microgreen kale, because they're these little tiny leaves that have more nutrients packed into the little tiny leaf than the adult plant overall, relatively speaking. So
Yeah.
microgreens may be the gateway to getting your bird eating those things.
And, I think,
But
and
sprouts
we could all use
sprouts
more
sprouts are
microgreens.
usually like a day or two. Say it again.
Yeah. I said we could all use more microgreens in our lives. And again,
Yes.
microgreens are pretty easy. I think it was, Adrian said she's been growing microgreens on paper towels.
Hmm.
So, I mean,
Sure.
it's that simple.
They
Frank
they
wants to
make
know.
they use coconut coir. They use hemp mats. They
Yes.
use paper towels. They use all kinds of different things because you're not trying to nourish this plant because you're going to feed it when it's a baby. So it doesn't need nutrients in the soil to fuel its growth because all the nutrients it needs are packed into that seed. Mom and dad plants, like, they know they need to everything you need is in that seed to grow, to jumpstart growth. That's why seeds have fats and starches and proteins, because that's what plants need to grow big enough to have leaves, and then once they have leaves they can do photosynthesis and make food for themselves. So
Mhm.
that's really, in a nutshell, no pun intended.
Um, sorry, I'm just trying to read some comments here. Frank wanted to know, can you buy a coconut, break it open, and give it to the birds? Yes, you can.
Yes.
Absolutely. Frank, I mean, you
Bonnie's
can,
Bonnie Bonnie Zimmerman Bonnie Zimmerman from Indonesian Parrot Project has images and footage of cockatoos that are disgustingly dirty because they've burrowed their heads in and they're sticking their heads into these giant coconuts and eating them, and they're
Mhm.
getting all this stuff all over them, and they are having one hell of a good time with it. So yes.
Yeah. And, Jason and Bonnie and I did a talk one time, about how to make, similar enrichment to what she was seeing, the birds in Indonesia, what they were actually doing. And so we came up with some fun ideas. That was a good, we should do that again. Um,
Yeah, definitely.
so, all right. We've covered a lot. I think, hopefully it'll get people thinking about different things they can grow, different things they can, they can start at home. And it's going to be spring sometime in the Northeast. I don't know when, but sometime.
Spring
Well,
is on a Thursday, I think, isn't it?
yeah, exactly, right? But so let's start thinking about these kind of things, how to introduce these things. We also need to kind of, if you're not growing it, knowing what your source is for where you're buying it. Um, you know, any last suggestions for people, Jason? There was a lot to cover tonight, and I appreciate everything.
Yeah, no, farmers markets are your friend. You can talk directly to the people that are harvesting the stuff if you're not growing it yourself. You can grow there. There are things that are possible for anybody to grow, regardless of where they live, regardless of how they live. There's absolutely ways that you can grow something grow some things for your birds and for yourself, and share them. But there's lots and lots of options, and start small. Successive
Mhm.
approximations. Always start stepwise, and start with sprouts, and then once you do sprouts and you're like, wow, 24 hours I've got fresh food for my birds, then you can graduate and maybe let those grow for um, a few more days, and they become microgreens, things like that. So once you get comfortable, you just have to realize the huge diversity of food that's available for us to feed our birds. I mean, there are hundreds and hundreds of things that we could be feeding our birds. So take
Yeah.
advantage.
Well, thank you. So, how do they check out what you've got on biodiversity, bird blends?
So biobirdblends.com is the main site. The link for the stores up at the top. I say this all the time. A portion of every sale is helping us fund the animal nutrition lab that focuses on bird nutrition at St. Xavier University, as well as the Avian Preservation and Education Conservancy that's actually housed here in Florida. Some of you probably know Dr. Caroline Evstethian, who heads up that conservation organization. She's done work in the wild with parrots, as well as here in Florida, where they're breeding the Florida grasshopper sparrow that's critically endangered, and they're re-releasing those birds into the wild, as well as the Red Siskin Project and things like that. So every sale helps with that, but we're really working hard to come up with biologically appropriate ways to diversify your diet and give your birds things that they're naturally eating in the wild as best we can.
Very cool. Well, thank you, Jason. And while I've got everybody's attention, and Jason, actually, I'm gonna to say this for you as well. Carrie Ellen from Bird Gardens of Naples and I are embarking on a epic road trip. We're calling it the Rockstar Rescue Tour 2024. And Jason will be donating to that as well. There will be product from biodiversity blends going to all the rescues. But I wanted to kind of explain a little bit what we're doing. We are visiting 10 rescues starting in Maine and ending in Florida. We're visiting 10 rescues and starting July 9th. And you can support those rescues. I'll list the rescues real quickly. Rhode Island Parrot Rescue, Lonely Gray Rescue, Nana and Papa's Nest Parrot Rescue, Cape Fear Parrot Rescue, Majestic Wings Rescue, Straw Hat Parrots Rescue, Feathered Friends Forever, Ziggy's Haven, and Bird Gardens of Naples. And so we're going to be visiting all of those, doing some fun stuff with them, and delivering toys and some food items and fun stuff. And we got a very large donation today from Bonka Bird Toys. And Carrie Ellen went and picked up some toys from them. We want to thank them so much for their contribution. So the rescues will be getting some of those amazing toys. And then A&E is also going to be donating. They'll be supporting us. And we've had two wonderful the rescues are all listed there. We have two wonderful donations that came in. One was from Diane Hyde. Diane is a rock star. Diane, if you're listening tonight, I want to thank you. Diane donated a box to every rescue on the tour, and is also supporting some of our gas. And then Carrie Ellen also made a large donation, so they'll be getting a bunch more toys. Any donations you make, pretty much it's double. We are doubling from the Leather Elves what they'll be getting. The cost of those is next to nothing as far as the donation boxes are concerned. So you can go to the leatherelves.equid.com and click on the Rockstar tab, and you can decide what size box you'd like to purchase to support any of these rescues. And then once you decide what size box you want, you go to the drop down menu and choose which rescue. We have challenged each rescue to raise as much as they possibly can. So if you can help them, then it will help us help them. So we're looking forward to this. We'll be broadcasting daily while we're on the road and showing you what we're seeing at all these really cool rescues. So again, thank you, Jason, and hopefully some of you guys who are out there listening can support the Rockstar Road Trip, and we'll go from there. Have a great night, Jason. Thank you, and everybody have a great week. Next week will be pre-recorded. I did an interview with Sophie Barnett and David Trebus. Sophie, you probably know as Bird Nerd Sophie on Instagram, and David is the parrot teacher. What we talked about was the welfare and ethics of parrot keeping. So that will be next week on Friday at 7. Everybody take care. Have a good week.